Greetings, brothers and sisters. We are now at the time of the end, and many mysteries are being revealed. And once again, we are going to do, as His Word describes, divide His Word of truth. And let's notice that it is twofold in nature. We are going to cover today the following. 1. We are told that we will recognize them by their fruits. This is how we are to know them. And 2. Discover the connection between these fruits and His MOEDims, His appointed times. Now notice they have to do with the harvests which are spoken throughout His Word. And we are to recognize that this is His wisdom. Now 3. Consider also how He has described our very beginnings by using these two trees as a metaphor, a comparison of sorts. And also how He has shown us our end by using the same metaphor of two types of trees. We have the good tree, which has the good fruit, the tree of life. And we have the bad tree with its bad fruit, and this is the tree of death. And we are told that the axe is already at the root of this tree, meaning, right, He's already determined those who will be destroyed. Now finally, 4, we are going to see His hidden wisdom that describes these 12 fruits spoken of in Revelation 22, verse 2, and how all this is prophecy. And they are His promises to do with the restoration of all things. And notice again, we have two trees. These symbolize two classes of angels. The one on the right has more glory than the one on the left. Now join me as we delve deeper into these mysteries and be amazed at the wisdom of Elohim. Let us meditate on these words as we're going to declare wisdom in this message. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 35. The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools. We ought to recognize that wisdom is supreme. Notice, it is through wisdom that we inherit glory, or shame in the case of the latter. Now who wants to be the fool on that day when we stand before the Creator, the Mighty One? We know it does not bode well with the fool on the day of judgment. In these very words, He is separating His people, those who are wise and those who are foolish. Now let's remember that Hebrew word for fool is the word evil, sounding like the English word evil, and literally it means you are without knowledge and understanding, which comes through wisdom. Now we're told the following in Proverbs chapter 2 verse 6. Jehovah gives wisdom from His mouth, come knowledge and understanding. And also Ben Sirach chapter 24 verse 3. I came forth from the mouth of the Most High and covered the earth like a mist, meaning the Spirit. Now wisdom taught me and showed me these words. Sirach chapter 24 verse 31. They that explain me shall have, listen, life everlasting, eternal life. So declaring wisdom is what we are to do, and most importantly, learn wisdom. Consider the parable of the 10 virgins, realizing that this knowledge of wisdom is very deep and profound. We see that 5 are wise, meaning wisdom, and 5 are foolish. Now notice also this division of 10 into 2 groups. Now 10 is signifying those covenant keepers, and this number 10 is reminding us of His 10 commandments, which are the conditions of His will. And we even see that these 10 commandments have 2 divisions. 1 to do with the heavenly realm, and 2 to do with the earthly domain. Now those who took the oil with them is signifying those that walked in the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, meaning the Spirit stayed with them. They have grown in the Spirit and produced those fruits which we will find come from wisdom. Now we even have this parable in wisdom in Matthew chapter 13 verse 12. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Now give ear to this amazing wisdom. Remember that the Spirit was given as a deposit to those born-again believers. The seed is His word which was planted, and it was to grow and produce this fruit, which we are going to talk about. So, if we have not produced this fruit and grown in the Spirit, it means that the Spirit has withdrawn from the corrupted temple. The word is clear. Everything would become corrupted and defiled. They would abandon their faith. There would be false teachers, prophets, and even messiahs. So it's no surprise we have so much division and discord in the end. And let's understand that this outcome was understood a very long time ago, and by His hidden wisdom, He has even foretold these matters in prophecy. Let's read a segment from the Ascension of Isaiah in a moment. You may ask, why this book? Well, let's consider these words in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 37. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, they were put to death by the sword. The writer of Hebrews notes the many ways in which his people died for the truth. It even mentions some were sawed in two. Now this account is not mentioned anywhere else in the composition of books we have in our Bibles today. And we know from history many books were removed, and many were even classed as apocrypha, meaning hidden. Clearly this was not the case during the time of the New Covenant writings, and the apostles were aware of this knowledge and books. This account in the Ascension of Isaiah describes exactly what happened to Isaiah. Now we read this in chapter 3 verse 9. And many in Jerusalem and in Judea He will cause to abandon the true faith, and Beliar, Satan, will dwell in Manasseh, and by his hands I shall be sawn asunder. Now, this is Isaiah foretelling, prophesying his own death. And we know Isaiah was a true prophet of Jehovah, and he actually foretold many prophecies about the Messiah, and so much more. Now, Isaiah, the Hebrew word is Yesha-Yahu, meaning Jehovah is salvation. Now these words we're about to read are all prophecy, and we should pay attention to these words as it describes the times just before the return in the end. Now, we cannot be certain when this book was originally written, and most likely it was written by Isaiah himself, who had knowledge beforehand of his death, which he described in the words of this book. And let's remember 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 20. Above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by the prophet's own interpretation of things. For prophecy never had its origin in the human will, but prophets, though human, spoke from Elohim as were carried along by the Ruach HaKodesh. So let's keep these words in mind, that these are prophecies, and they come from Elohim and His Spirit. Now that we have laid the foundations, let's begin in chapter 3, verse 20, and let's meditate on these words. And many signs and wonders will be wrought in those days. And in verse 21, and afterwards, on the eve of His approach, His disciples will forsake the teachings of the 12 apostles, and their faith, and their love, and their purity. Now, this clearly speaking about on the approach, meaning the return of the Messiah, that there would be much corruption in the end, and that the people would forsake the true teachings of the 12 apostles, meaning they would twist everything, and we will see there will be so much division everywhere. And in verse 22, and there will be much contention on the eve of His advent and His approach. And this is talking about heated disagreement among the brothers and sisters, because there is no unity, and most importantly, no wisdom. And we read in verse 23 the confirmation of this, And in those days many will love office, though devoid of wisdom. Now, interesting choice of words here. Love office, i.e. work. And note, devoid of wisdom, meaning these people are not wise. And in verse 24, and there will be many lawless elders and shepherds dealing wrongly by their own sheep, and they will ravage them, owing to their not having these set apart shepherds. Now these words speak for themselves. They are forsaking the Torah and the commandments, because their leaders, their shepherds, are dealing wrongly, not teaching the truth. And then we read in verse 25, and many will change the honor of the garments of the saints for the garments of the covetous. And there will be much respect of persons in those days, and lovers of the honor of this world. Now, speaking of the 10th commandment, not to covet, or have this inordinate desire for wealth or possessions, or even things belonging to someone else. And we see that they will be lovers of the honor of this world. And we are told not to love anything in this world, but be content. And verse 26, and there will be much slander and vainglory at the approach of Yahovah, and the Ruach HaKodesh will withdraw from many. Now these words speak truth in these days. Slander, vanity. And note that the Spirit will not abide when unrighteousness comes in, meaning depart the corrupted temple. Now in verse 27, and there will not be in those days many prophets, nor those who speak trustworthy words, save one here and there in divers places. This states that there will be many trustworthy people because of this slander and vainglory, and of course lack of wisdom. But it states there will only be a few. And just like the words Yeshua stated in Matthew 24:14, Yeshua tells us that many are called, but a few are chosen. Now in verse 28, on the account of spirit of error and fornication, and of vainglory, and of covetousness, we shall be in those who will be called servants of that one, and in those who will receive that one. Now we're told to test the spirits, because not every spirit comes from Elohim. And we note that many will have this spirit of error. Notice this is speaking of those people who claim to be of that one, meaning followers of Yeshua. And no wonder he says to them in Matthew chapter 7 verse 23, then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. And in verse 29, and there will be great hatred in those shepherds and elders towards each other. We are told that the love of many would grow cold in Matthew 24 verse 12. Now in verse 30, for there will be great jealousy in the last days, for everyone will say what is pleasing in his own eyes. And they will make of none effect the prophecy of the prophets which were before me, and these my visions also will they make of none effect, in order to speak after the impulse of their own hearts. Now we've just read some amazing prophecy here, written ahead of time by the wisdom of Elohim. So we'll begin with these verses, and I would like us to consider how deep wisdom is. By concealing deep knowledge within the parable, consider these words in Matthew chapter 7 verse 18. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. And also Matthew chapter 12 verse 33. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. Now these are deep parables. That means we will be able to recognize these two types of trees. And notice there are only two choices. Now wisdom gives us the ability to see these things in each other. When we think about these trees, it is very reminiscent of those two trees we had from the very beginning. Remember the tree of knowledge between good and evil. Now notice the difference between these trees. Well, this tree knew the difference between good and evil, and mankind ate from this tree. And this metaphor of eating means to grow in knowledge. And we're told that man's heart was inclined to evil all the time, meaning foolish. And notice all the time. Now mankind chose the ways of evil instead of good. And this has been his mindset ever since. Now the Creator speaks of this in Genesis chapter 6 verse 5. Jehovah saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Just like wisdom stated, if the tree is bad, it cannot bear good fruit by itself. Then we had the tree of life. And notice that the tree of life is one mindset, which is all about life. And we'll talk more on this fruit later. And most importantly, this tree is immortal and incorruptible, meaning perfect. So in like manner, in this parable we just read, these verses in Matthew, these trees symbolize people. We are to recognize these two types of trees, and there are only two types, or two choices, a good tree or a bad tree. And it is the fruits on the tree that determine them. That means we will be able to tell who they are by their attitudes, actions, and behaviors. Now our Creator, by His wisdom, uses trees as a metaphor for His creation. You see, we share a common destiny with the tree, just like we use the term family tree, where these branches are our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, our descendants. Now when the Creator looks at the tree, He sees you, your descendants. He sees the roots, the branches, the leaves, the fruit, everything. He sees everything. Now that's a deep metaphor in wisdom. Since the very beginning, the Creator has spoken to His people through His wisdom, which is hidden. And He has already foretold our destiny and fate, which is written in His Word. Now we're going to take this parable here of these two trees in the Garden of Eden. We see that this is a metaphor. Now fruit is metaphor. And remember, it is written, a picture paints 1,000 words. And this is what is being spoken here. A lot of deep things. And it has a lot to do with the family tree. Now by using these two types of trees, the Creator has presented mankind and presented us with a choice. And we were to choose life or death. Now symbolizing the tree of life. And remember, Messiah said, if you come to me, you will have life and you will have it to the full. And then we have the tree of knowledge between good and evil, free will. And notice there's a choice here between good and evil, meaning we have to choose. Now the Creator is very consistent. What He spoke in the very beginning through these two types of trees continues this saga right through to the very end, accumulating with two types of trees. The good tree, symbolized as good fruit, the fruit of the Spirit. This tree is the tree of life. And then we have the bad tree, symbolized as bad fruit. And also, let's not forget that the Creator has used these two olive trees, symbolizing Israel and Judah. And this is a very consistent message in the Word. It's in the beginning, it's in the middle, and it is all the way through to the end. And what did He state He was going to do? He was going to unite these two trees into one olive tree, symbolizing unity. Now let's read these words again. We read them earlier in Matthew chapter 7, verse 18. A good tree, which is this tree here, cannot bear bad fruit. And a bad tree, which is this tree here, cannot bear good fruit. Now remember what Messiah stated, right? Either make the tree good So we're talking here about this good tree and its fruit good, or make the tree bad, right? And its fruit bad. And then he stated the following: the tree is known by its fruit. And these trees symbolize us. And the Creator is very clear. He gives us this distinction between these two types of trees by showing us what these fruits symbolize. And you notice there are only two choices here. And we're to look upon these trees. So if we do not have these qualities, these fruits that are spoken of upon this tree, well, that means we are the bad tree. And that is really deep there. Which is why the word states that we will recognize them by their fruits. When we look at what the word teaches us about these trees, these fruits, well, what did Messiah stated? He said, from out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, right? Adultery. He names these two: sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, and slander. Well, someone may state that I've never committed murder or adultery. Well, what did the word teach us? Well, he says that if you are angry with your brother, you've already committed murder in your heart. Or if you have looked lustfully at another man's wife, you've already committed adultery. So it is the thought that is being brought into question here, right? What comes out? Because what manifests itself, what these thoughts do in reality, is they manifest themselves into an action. So the Creator is dealing with the root of the problem, which is the thought. And in like manner, we see what the fruit of the Spirit is. The Word teaches us this, that it is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, and so on. So you see, it is very clear on how we will recognize these two types of trees. And remember, there are only two choices from the very beginning: life or death. Now finally, I want you to consider carefully in Matthew 3:10, what does it state? It states that the axe is already at the root of the trees. And every tree that does not produce this fruit, right, will be cut down and thrown into the fire. We're going to see something quite amazing here with the Creator's MOEDims. Now, embedded within the MOEDims, the Creator has hidden many things by His wisdom. And we can see one, they have to do with His appointed times. Now, He has declared this within His Word, that He has foretold the end from the beginning. This is spoken of in Isaiah 46:10. And number two, they have to do with the Messiah and the Spirit and the fulfillment of the seed of the woman, spoken of in Genesis 3:15. And number three, they are to do with the harvest. Now, He also reveals deep and hidden things. Now, this is in Daniel chapter 2, verse 22. And we will begin with the words in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 6. And it states the following. Now that Deuteronomy, the Hebrew word is devarim, meaning words. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before Yehovah your Elohim, and listen in a place which He shall choose. And then it lists the times, and it talks about the feast of unleavened bread. Now we look at the feast of unleavened bread, it has to do with the barley harvest, and it's called Hag Hamotzi. And then in the Feast of Weeks, well, the Feast of Weeks is known as Shavuot. And let's observe something amazing here. This is the precise time that the Creator confirmed the first covenant around His 10 Commandments. And it is also the time that He confirmed the second covenant when the apostles received the Spirit on Pentecost. Well, that is that same day, Shavuot. Now, and also it states, and in the Feast of Tabernacles. Now this is known as Sukkot, And let's observe also this has to do with the fruit harvest. And then he states the following: and they shall not appear before Jehovah empty. Now that Hebrew word there for empty is rakam, and it means to be appear before him in vain or empty or not sincere. So let's keep that in mind when we are to present ourselves before him. And notice he states at a time of his choosing. Okay, and we can see that all of these particular times have to do with the harvest times. And this is vital because this is spoken about a lot in his word, the harvest. Now, we see this cycle of 3 times a year, and it's like a kind of rehearsal. But we see hidden here also is the Creator's plan, his greater plan, and it has to do with this greater cycle of time, which he speaks about in his word. And it has to do with a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. So we see we have this yearly cycle that we are to observe, but the Creator has his greater cycle. And we'll see that this is precisely what his appointed times are teaching us. We see that they are fulfilled by the Messiah and his Spirit. And let's observe it has everything to do with the refinement of his people, the new Adam, the new man. And it is accumulating in the completion and the perfection at the end of time. We can see that the MOEDims are very deep, and he's hidden many things in the MOEDims, and they all have a deeper meaning. And we can see that at one level, the physical level, this is speaking here about the cultivation of the crops for the food. But at a deeper level, this has to do with a parable in wisdom and the cultivation of the mind, the plan of the new Adam. Now, Messiah used this language many times when explaining spiritual matters to his disciples. He would use parables in wisdom. He would speak about the sower and the seed and explain the works of the Spirit. Now, this cultivation process has to do with refinement, and he is comparing it onto crops. Let's briefly look at the different harvest types. And at one level, when he speaks about the barley, well, what do we notice about barley? Well, it is produced before the wheat comes up. And barley symbolizes a rougher type of people, not refined at all, more coarse in nature. Just like barley is harsh in texture, these people are rude or vulgar. And of course, barley was used as a sole grain in the diets of classes of animals such as pigs, cattle, horses, sheep, and goats. Now we take wheat on the other hand. Now wheat must undergo processing before it can be converted into food. As wheat is more refined than barley, representing a people of more stature and quality. And finally, we take the fruit harvest. Well, we know it speaks about the fruit of the Spirit. Well, the fruit symbolizes the Spirit, which is more essence and vitality and prosperity. And when we notice that the fruit is produced on the 7th day, symbolizing completion and perfection. So finally, this fruit symbolizes the indwelling of the Ruach HaKodesh. Now that we have covered the elementaries, let's see their fulfillment, his appointed times. Now when we consider these 4 appointed times, right, and I'm speaking about the barley and the wheat harvest, well, we'll observe that this has to do with the wilderness journey. And we're going to see that the Creator has dealt with his people twice in history. And notice it was at a time of his choosing. And I'm speaking about the account of Moshe and the Israelites and Yeshua and the Israelites. Well, if we observe with Moshe and the Israelites, it had to do with coming up out of Egypt. And this was the works once with the Spirit. And then with Yeshua and the Israelites, well, we're going to see it has to do with coming out of Babylon. And this time, he dealt with his people in the flesh. Now, when we give the account of Moshe, we see that they ate the same unleavened bread, right? They had the feast, the barley feast, that went through the first fruits and the wheat harvest. And what do we notice on this particular day? Well, the Creator stated that he would meet with his people at a place of his choosing. And this was spoken of in Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16. And he gave them his 10 commandments. Well, we know from history they were a coarse group of people, just like the barley. There were no fruits in those days. They did not keep his commandments or his ways, and they were given over to Babylon. Now we see the account of Yeshua. Well, what do we observe? The same pattern again, because Yeshua is the Passover lamb, and we see that this exact pattern, the wilderness journey, occurred. They ate the same unleavened bread, a metaphor for a perfect life, the matzah. And we see the Messiah is the first fruits. And then finally, the promise is fulfilled of the wheat harvest. We see that on this same day, he gave them the Ruach HaKodesh, his spirit. So we see that this pattern repeated twice in history, and twice the Creator met at a place of his choosing. Now, that's quite amazing. Now, if we observe this final day, right? Well, this is known as the day of Yehovah. And what do we notice? Well, it occurs on the 7th day, right? And it has to do with the fruit harvest. And we are to present ourselves before him. We are to make sure that we appear not in vain or with empty hands, because we are to bear the fruits he speaks about on those trees that we spoke about, the fruits of immortality. Now, this is the deeper meaning of these harvests. And let's consider finally these words in Matthew chapter 25, verse 29. For the one who has, right, the fruit will be given more until he overflows with abundance. And the one with hardly anything, meaning this fruit, right, even what little he has will be taken from him. Now, we will finish up with this beautiful illustration of these two trees here. We have these two trees, okay? And these two trees are by the stream. And this is the picture we are given in Revelations 22. What I want us to observe is that this is representing the completion, the perfection, and the restoration of Gan Eden. Now, the Creator has made numerous promises with his word to the 12 tribes of Israel and our ancestors, our forefathers. And he also states in his word in Joshua 21:45, not one of all Jehovah's good promises to Israel failed. Everyone was to be fulfilled. And this is what we're going to observe, is that these prophecies are going to be fulfilled, all of them. And what we have here is there are prophecies spoken of in Ezekiel 47. We'll just highlight those, and we're going to see they are being fulfilled in Revelations 22. Now, in Ezekiel 47, the prophecy dictates we have this river of life coming from the temple, and we have these promises concerning the children of Israel, the 12 tribes, and their inheritance. And remember, he chose 12,000 from each tribe, signifying down to 44,000. And also we have this metaphor of these two trees, and they are on both sides of the riverbanks. And we see that they bear fruit every month, and their leaves are for the healing. And we're also told in that prophecy that the land was to be equally divided among the tribes, meaning fair. And we see it is to be divided by the 4 directions, north, east, south, and west. And we also have this imagery of these two groups of people, the children of Israel and the foreigners who are living among them, who have children. And we are told in that prophecy that a double portion is to go to Joseph. Now remember, in Genesis 49:26, The reason Joseph gets a double portion, because you are the leader of your brothers. And this division of the land was a promise, because the Creator swore with an uplifted hand to give it to your ancestors. This land will become your inheritance. Now, what I want to point out here is that is a future promise and a future prophecies. And we see that these prophecies are actually fulfilled in Revelations 22. And let's note something. This is after the new heavens and the new earth are formed. Meaning he is speaking about a future event. Now we have also this imagery spoken of in Jeremiah chapter 70, verse 7 to 8. It said, "But blessed is the one who trusts in Jehovah, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree," right? Remember? And we're going to talk about these fruits in a moment and what this symbolizes. It said they will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes, and here we have it. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought, and it never fails to bear fruit. And this is the fruit we're going to speak about very shortly. Now, let's get some insights into what these 12 fruits symbolize. Now, we've seen that the fruits symbolize attributes and qualities of the Spirit. We have discussed that earlier. Because you see, there are good fruit and there are bad fruit. And also we have 12, which is a number to do with design, but also to do with the promise, because there were 12 tribes. And we see that this new Jerusalem coming down out of heaven to earth, well, what do we observe? Well, it has 12 gates, and there are 12 angels. The gates are inscribed with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel written on them, and the city has 12 foundations, and on them are the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And we have the 12 tribes' names, and we have the 12 apostles' names written. And then the angel measured the wall using human measurement, and it was 144 cubits thick. We see the allusion here to those 144,000 sealed. Now, let's observe that in the end, we have these two trees bearing 12 fruits. Now, these fruits have a deeper meaning, and the answer to what these 12 fruits are can be found in the parable of the shepherd of Hermes, right? Now, I'll provide a high-level overview of some of the parables here, but now parables, remember, is the language of wisdom, and this is the language the Messiah spoke to the people. And I would highly recommend you read these words for yourself, and remember that the Shepherd of Hermes was a book that was highly esteemed amongst those early believers, when knowledge was fresh within the minds of the people, and wisdom was heard among the people. Now, the summary of this parable, and I'll provide the link in the description, right? It talks about this building, this tower, and the mother is wisdom. And she has 12 daughters. And there is this building, and these rocks are being fitted into the building, right? Now, the building, of course, is a metaphor symbolizing the assembly of the people. Now, this is what we refer to today as the church, but really speaking about the people. And we see there are also these 7 virgins around the building. And there are a total of 12 virgins. Now, this is reminiscent of these 12 fruits we see on these 2 trees of life, one on either side of the bank. Now, in this parable, we also have, it speaks about these 2 women, and we just spoke about the first woman, wisdom, and this other woman, who is clothed in black raiment. Now, of course, the black in this parable is symbolizing the ways of death. And the word in the end describes this woman as Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots. Like I said, we are compared onto a spiritual building and trees. And we have these 2 trees, and we have these 2 women. And we see that these 2 women are desirable to the people. So some desire one woman, some desire this other woman. Now, furthermore, we can see that this building in this parable is surrounded by these 7 women who are the daughters of wisdom. And they are described as follows: faith, continence, simplicity, knowledge, guilelessness, reverence, and love. Now, these are what I'm highlighting here is that these fruits actually symbolize these qualities. Now, it also says their powers are mastered each by the other, and they follow each other in order in which they are born. As it says, from faith is born continence, right? And from continence is simplicity. From simplicity is guilelessness. From guilelessness, reverence. From reverence, knowledge. And from knowledge, love. Their works then are pure and reverent and divine. Now, I'm going to read a little part of the parable. I'm going to read in, I guess it's chapter 13, verse 5. And this is the words that are spoken. It said, "Listen," said he, "the names of the Son of Elohim is great and incomprehensible, and sustaineth the whole world. If then all creation is sustained by the Son of Elohim, what thinkest thou of those that are called by him, and bear the name of the Son of Elohim, and walk according to his commandments?" And then it says, "Seest thou then what manner of men he sustaineth, even those that bear his name with their whole heart? He himself then is become their foundation, and he sustaineth them gladly, because they are not ashamed to bear his name." And then it says, "Declare to me, sir, say I, the names of the virgins, and of the women that are clothed in the black garments." "Here," said he, "the names of the more powerful virgins, those that are stationed at the corners." And it lists these 12 fruits here that we see upon this foundation, this tree or building. It's used interchangeably to describe the people. He said the first is faith, right? And the second is continence, and the third power, and the fourth long suffering. But the others stationed between them have these names: simplicity, guilelessness, purity, cheerfulness, truth, understanding, concord, and love. Now listen to what it says. It says that he that beareth these names and the names of the Son of Elohim shall be able to enter into the kingdom of Elohim. Now remember, we are to put on, we are to be prepared for the bride. Well, this is what it's speaking about. Because what you're going to observe is we are told we would recognize them by their fruits. And we see the fruits upon these trees. That is what we are to see in each and every one of us. We are to have faith. We are to have love, simplicity, understanding, cheerfulness. All right? We are to have all of these fruits upon the trees because these are perfect. Now, we'll just finish up. Even though we've covered this is the future, the new heavens and the new earth, right? Just going back to the symbolism in the parable of these 2 women and the fruits they bear, right? So we talked about the good fruit, right? And then we talked about there were these 2 women, and one was clothed in black. Well, in that parable, it describes what those fruits are upon those people. And it's really quite remarkable when we read that, because we'll see that there are 12 good fruits and there are 12 bad fruits in that parable. And I'm going to read from, I guess, chapter 15, verse 3. And it describes this woman who wears the black garments. He said, "Here," said he, "likewise the names of the woman that wear the black garments. And of these also 4 are more powerful than the rest," right? And it says the first is unbelief. So remember with the good woman, it was started with faith, and everything was built upon faith. But with this other woman, it starts with unbelief, right? And then the second is intemperance. The third is disobedience. The fourth is deceit. And their followers are called sadness, wickedness, wantonness, irascibility, falsehood, folly, slander, and hatred. And then we're told, the servant of Elohim that beareth these names shall see the kingdom of Elohim, but shall not enter it. So we have this remarkable comparison of these 12 qualities upon these two different trees in this context. And it says that if we have got this good fruit, right, and we bear those names, well, we will enter into the kingdom. But if we have these other fruits, and notice it says, the servant of Elohim that beareth these names shall see the kingdom of Elohim, but shall not enter into it.